As Charlotte said, today's topic is surrender. She comes up with all the topics. I like today's topic as well, surrender. Good one for Monday. Good one for a holiday week in the States. Surrender is really a spiritual principle, isn't it? You wouldn't use it, say, in the military. I don't think surrender is a good value in the military. Surrender might not be a good value on the battlefield or on the field of business. People might equate it to giving up, throwing in the towel, waving the white flag. I surrender. I think in the spiritual sense, I'm not able to see myself on there. Are you the one on the screen now, Charlotte, or am I?
You're on the screen.
Maybe I have the wrong view.
Sorry, what's that?
All I'm seeing is you on the screen, Charlotte.
How about right now?
You're full screen.
Still? Wait.
Okay.
Still?
Where are we? No, I think you had it right before.
Wait.
I think you had it right before. Okay.
Still?
Where are we? Yeah, we're good. No, I think you had it right before. This is awesome.
Okay.
So,
Great.
I think you had it right before. All right.
Close.
Yeah, we're going. Yeah, I think you had it right before.
All right. So this
This is
is
awesome. So,
this is such a perfect real-time explication of surrender. So I'm sitting there, I think the video is not working right. So I'm thinking, how do we correct this? Do we stop in the middle of it to try to address this? I'm having to surrender to the moment. Sometimes things go chaotic. Sometimes things go haywire, especially in media type things like this, where you're broadcasting something. You've been there. Surrender is, I guess, not puckering up, clenching up inside, going, oh no, everything's going wrong. Surrender is like, you know what? It doesn't matter. God's got all this whole thing under control. I'm barely a participant. I'm just rolling on the screen of this. Mm. Emma Chodron has a great book called When Things Fall Apart. When we look at the apparent reality out there, sometimes it seems quite chaotic. There's entropy and decay and missed opportunities, it seems. Things fall apart. But in the overarching harmony of things, are they really falling apart? Or is that just an appearance? Is that just an illusion? You look at the stock market. Since decades ago, it's traded in this pretty straight channel. .com bubble, housing market crash, COVID. These are, low lows, but the low lows never go below this channel. The high highs never really go above the channel. So if you're heavily invested in something that, gets a bad news cycle event or bad media hit and people pile out of it and it loses a lot of its market share overnight, you're losing all your money. It's likely to come back the next day or the next week or month. Those moments in which the bottom falls out and you think it's all over are really a fundamental process of that bandwidth. That's the wave pattern. That's how a wave moves. That's mode of energy. There's no such thing as just straight up. In my experience, it's out of chaos that an amazing harmony and equanimity and higher level awareness emerge. Don't you find that when you go through a major phase shift in your life? Major depression, something goes real bad. Maybe it's pinned to events. Maybe it's just an internal cycle. And you spiral into this darkness and this contraction and feel like a black hole. When you come out of it, you're where you started, but in a higher order of awareness. So go through these cycles. You don't just land here again. Go. You go back to what appears to be the baseline, ground zero, but it's a little bit higher this time. It's a little bit higher harmonic. And so that's what's happening. We're spiraling upward like the helix of the DNA. Oh gosh, I'm just 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. 2 steps forward, 4 steps back, it seems sometimes. 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. But really, it's not. If you're like me, when you come out of those really dark times in which none of the signs mean anything, you lose all sense of place. You don't know who you are. Language doesn't make any sense. You're like, what is going on? Why am I here? Almost like those old switchboards, you know, with phone operators, they'd have to take the plug out from here. Transylvania 65000, Beverly Hills 90210, or whatever it is. When you're plugged out of one location, one realm of being, one way of seeing, you need to go up to the next level before God plugs you back in to the switchboard. But in that interim period, there's weightless, spaceless, timeless feeling. Then he plugs you back in a little higher. Those are the times that are really important to surrender to. Because if you don't surrender, you're going to try to fix it. Oh, geez, everything's wrong. I'm confused. I must try to fix it. We better get on some medication or talk to my therapist or change my diet. Start journaling. Do some stuff to fix it. In my experience, the real fix-it plan is surrender. What are you surrendering to? You're not surrendering to circumstances exactly. You're surrendering to God. I saw some university student ask a question to his professor on this video. He was talking about Taoism and the virtues of Taoism and acceptance. And his professor must have been a Western-minded gentleman, reductive, scientific thinker, and was pushing back. The kid sort of laid out what Taoism is about, kind of, accepting, going with the flow. And the professor rightly asked, so what happens when the Nazis march in? Are you just going to go with the flow and cave in because that's what's happening in the moment? And the kid's like, oh, yeah, I guess that's a good point. What both of them didn't realize or didn't recognize in the moment about the virtues of that sort of Eastern way of thinking. You're not surrendering to the Nazis, you're surrendering to God. God is bigger than the Nazis. The Nazis are contained within God. God is not contained within them. Just because they're the power of the moment doesn't mean that's what you're surrendering to. Oh, do I have to surrender to my president if I don't agree with him? Do I have to surrender to my boss? Do I have to surrender to my family if I don't agree with them? That's not the kind of surrender I'm talking about. I don't mean go around being a milquetoast follower, not at all. You're a leader if you're following God. But it's the forces in the world that push us into surrender if we're willing to allow it, if we're willing to see the mechanics of what's happening. You remember the Wizard of Oz? I know I've mentioned it a couple times lately. What did the Wicked Witch of the East say to Dorothy? Or is it the one of the West? Which is the one that's all the way through the whole thing? The Wicked Witch, what does she say to Dorothy all the time? Surrender. The Wicked Witch represents the forces that would challenge us into our own evolution. She's got fire on the end of her broom. She threatens the scarecrow with it. He's a ball of straw. He's going to go up in flames with that. She is addressing him with the thing that he fears most. She's addressing the cowardly lion with the thing that he fears most, which is fear itself. Thank you, Mr. Roosevelt. She's addressing Dorothy with the thing that she fears most, which is losing her home, spiraling out into the abyss without a sense of home, lost in adventure land with no sense of being able to go back to see mom and pop and those three guys at the farm. When the Wicked Witch is in the sky, skywriting, surrender, Dorothy. Those are the forces that push us closer into our own heart and challenge us to surrender to God. So you're not surrendering to the Wicked Witch. She has her own agenda. She doesn't know. She's just a tool. She's just an implement of God. All of our enemies are the implement of God. They're the ones that make it hard for us. It's tough love. So Dorothy doesn't exactly surrender to the Wicked Witch, but she surrenders to the moment. And that's what allows her to go home finally. Glinda, the good witch, comes back and says, all you have to do is click your heels 3 times. Say there's no place like home. What's home? This. This is the vortex. Most people in the West look at the heart as kind of a supplemental side excursion from what's really important, which is the brain. The brain does everything. No, it doesn't. This is the big torus field that connects us to all being. That goes with me right dead center of my being. Every single place this body goes, it's there. That vortex, that portal goes with me. When I stop making plans and figuring out what's going to happen next week, next month, next year, putting it down on my to-do list, checking it off when it comes, I stop being the doer, which I never was in the first place. And I give it back over to God and I say, all right, God, you're the doer. Use this body for your mission. Use this body for your vision. Let me help carry it out. I'm down here on earth. You're up in the sky and everywhere. Let me do your good work for you if I can. Show me. I've mentioned that a few times in this satsang. Show me how to worship you. Show me how to do your work. The first clue, it's not going to be whatever I dream up that day to do. Because as I said, I don't know what to do. God knows what to do. There's something really magical that arises in the moment that can't be planned even a minute in advance, let alone a day or a year in advance. There's a difference between satsang, which is what we're doing now. It's being in the company of truth. We're sharing truth. And when you come join us live in this Zoom session, you'll be able to participate in these conversations too. Ask questions, give your reflections, share stories, bring your insights. The link is in the description. Come join us for a Zoom session and you can sit down on these conversations. Or you can, just continue to watch on YouTube. That's good too. There's a difference between satsang and a PowerPoint presentation. Or a TED Talk. TED Talks are great, but they're so canned, aren't they? People just must spend hours and hours memorizing this whole script. Maybe they have teleprompters, I don't know. But they're going through it programmatically, word by word. What they're memorized, what they put in the can months in advance, trotting it out for this audience that may or may not even have any connection to what they're saying. I could never do that because I don't know what's going to emerge in the moment until it emerges. Everything that we've said so far today, none of that was planned, as should be obvious by the botched opening. It's not just saying stuff. I mean, the world spontaneously arises in our consciousness. If we're available for it, it is just one long magical mystery tour of synchronicity and grace. If we're not surrendered to it, if we're controlling events, if we're the decider, I'm the decider. I'll tell you something, I'm not the decider. Me? No. That's for others. Are you the decider? Maybe you can share a story in the comments about a time that you were the decider and it worked out well. It certainly can. The ego really loves it when you're the decider and it works out quite well. You're like, yep, won the day. Planned a birthday party, surprise party for my friend, and it came off with flying colors, and wow, that was amazing. That was a great plan. That just reinforces the ego. The ego thinks, aha, I got this. But you're always battling the forces out there, aren't you? You're just battling all the chaos that emerges. All the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. If you're truly surrendered in the moment, you're just on a conveyor belt. God is conveying you along to the destination, and you're just in perfect consilience. It also gets down to the notion of faith. Faith is a big concept in Christianity, isn't it? And I think it rubs atheists, agnostics, scientific types, reductive thinkers, cause and effect kind of thinkers, rubs them the wrong way. They're like, faith in what? Show me. What God? What faith? You're just going to invent stuff? You're going to hope for stuff? It's different than that. Faith is actually a knowingness. It's an understanding of how things work. It's a knowledge of the mechanics from lived experience, not out of a book. I don't mean any affront to my science friends. I like thinking in that way too. Something needs to be repeatable. You have to apply the scientific method, right? So that we can extract it, wrench it out of the realm of the subjective and bring it into the objective. Well, when you do that, you actually subtract almost all the whole lived experience from it. Oh, you can't say anything subjective. Oh, really? Too bad everything is subjective. Faith is repeatable too. Ramana Maharshi talked about extending faith like slicing a sausage. You know, one of those sausages you get from Cracker Barrel? Walk down the mall one day, if you can find one. They're still around. Walk down through the mall. Look for that Cracker Barrel. Go find one of those sausages, summer sausage, you know. Get a good knife. Slice off a little thin slice of that. That sausage represents total faith in God, faith in the perfection and sweetness of his compassion for us. You don't have to test it all in one fell swoop. Say, I'm going to trust my whole life to God. I'm going to put faith in it just as a concept because somebody told me to, or it says so in the Bible, or it told me at church, or David told me to do it. It's not about that. Take one little slice, give it to God and see what happens. If you want to do it around money, that's a good one to practice. You get a bill that comes in. You're like, oh, great. Bill comes in unannounced. I wasn't even expecting that. It's not even part of my monthly spending yet. Here I got $312 from X, Y, and Z company that I need to pay right now. And you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. Okay, let's start planning because I'm a person, I'm the decider, I'm going to plan. I'm going to have to work more. I'm going to have to borrow some money. I have to go knock over a convenience store. I don't recommend the latter, by the way. I was just giving an example of what some people think of. What if you just say, all right, God, you told me to give it over to you, right? I want to give this over to you. Can you please pay this for me? For those of you unacquainted with this dynamic, you might be really surprised what happens next. $312.15. If you really say, God, take care of this for me, I trust you to do it. Guess what? Usually by the end of the day, it will be taken care of, if not the hour. You'll get a miraculous call from your cousin, Carl, who for some reason came across a lot of money and he wants to just throw you a little because you're his favorite cousin. He'll be like, hey, I'm sending you a check for $316. Hope that's all right. And you say, sure, that's all right. And then you pull the calculator and go, wow, so you made 45 cents on the transaction. That's pretty good. You didn't even have to go and earn it. That's what happens. So if you're a cause and effect thinker, science-minded, oh, the brain does everything. Consciousness is just a function of the brain. There's no magic. There's no miracles. There's just, you know, you're going to say that's totally impossible. What does that have to do with anything? How can that possibly be? Well, test it out and see. That's what the scientific method is, isn't it? Analysis, observation, repeatability. This is repeatable. It's analyzable and observable. So that's one little slice of sausage, one thin little one that would barely go on top of a Ritz cracker with cheese. Very low stakes, doesn't really matter. Just try it. Try it as an experiment. Trust me, believe me on that one thing and try it. See what happens. Next bill that comes in unannounced. Say, God, please help me. Please take care of this for me. You don't have to give him any more instructions. Don't have to give him a timetable or anything. He knows all that stuff. So once he comes through on that, you might go, oh, well, what a coincidence. That was lucky. Not a coincidence. Try it again. Slice off another piece of that sausage. Your daughter's getting married. You're the father of the bride. You're the family. You have to take care of the wedding, right? But you're already just barely treading water. with your family budget. Your credit cards are maxed out. Wedding's coming up in January. You're freaking out. How am I going to come up with this money? Let's call it $50,000 for modest wedding. 50 grand, oh boy. I barely make that in a year. How am I going to come up with that? He says, the father. Slightly bigger slice of sausage. Good size one, not too thick. Give that over to God. Say, God, you were the one who brought my beautiful daughter into my life. You were the one who arranged this wedding. This is an arranged marriage. It always is, right? You were the one who arranged this. So can you help me, help me out? Pay for the wedding. Take care of it for me. And that too will come to pass. So that $320, add a couple zeros on it and more. What's the difference? It's just in consciousness, isn't it? What's the difference between asking for $100 or asking for $1 million? Add some zeros onto it, because if it originates only in your own consciousness, in your own mind, your own imagination, and you're asking God for this, why should there be a limit? What's the difference between dreaming of $10 and dreaming of $1 million? No difference. So ask God for that 50 grand and see what happens. In short order, it will arrive if you surrender to the means and ways that it will happen. You don't have to know how. In fact, the more you start thinking about how, the worse it is. None of your business how. God's business how. You're not going to have to borrow. They call it beg, borrow, and steal. That's what I used to be when I was making films. That's the ethos: beg, borrow, and steal. Anything you got to do to get the camera, the equipment, crew, hire the actors. You won't have to beg. You won't have to borrow, because then you're on the hook for it plus interest. You certainly shouldn't steal. It will arrive in good timing, that 50,000, from one or more magical origins. And I find that, as we talked about before, this is the week of Thanksgiving in the States. This is a great week to practice gratitude and giving thanks, not just on the day before you eat your turkey and potatoes and stuffing and gravy and all the rest. Gratitude has a really magical vibrational quality, but you have to start where you are. Look around and be grateful for what you have. And I would argue, be grateful for everything, the good and the bad. We talked about this last week. As Bhagavan says, we're always grateful for the boons in our life, but we're never grateful when things go south. That's where we make a mistake. Those are the teachable moments. That's the real instruction. That's the real evolution and advancement. That's the promotion. The dark times, the bad times, trouble. If you surrender to that in gratitude, that's the magic ticket. That's the magic carpet. Before you go to bed every night, and the moment you wake up in the morning, first thing you need to think is, if you follow this philosophy, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this and that, but I'm also gratitude itself. I'm grateful for all things. If I can tune my heart into that frequency of gratitude, oh man, how beautiful. Someone gives you a wonderful present. You're very moved by this very thoughtful present. Oh, wow. Makes you want to cry. That's the state you want to get in. Right before bed, right when you wake up. Those are the 3 times, okay? The moment you're falling asleep, the moment you're waking up, and every minute in between. Those are the 3 times you need to practice gratitude. That lubricates the gears for blessings and abundance to come in. It really does. So if you couple that with the sort of manifestation practice I was telling you about, and surrender to the way it's going to happen, all of your problems are going to be solved. You're going to realize you were the problem. You created the problems. The world didn't create them. So I was just testing you. All right. Surrender. I love it. Again, this is just a real-time explication of how one should surrender. Technical problems happen. Why is that happening today of all days, the day of surrender, the week of Thanksgiving? To show you, not just as a thought or a philosophy in a book or something somebody says, shows you how to make your way through that thorny forest like Dorothy and the rest. Meditation really helps you with surrender because that's what you're doing in practice every time you sit on the cushion or on your chair to meditate. You're doing a test run. It's like a dress rehearsal of surrender in the real world, because you're going to be assailed by all sorts of aggressive, insistent thoughts that are vying for your attention. What are you going to do that night for dinner? How are you going to solve this problem? How are you going to pay that $312 bill? How are you going to pay for your daughter's wedding? Where are you going to get your next meal? Where's the world going to get its next meal? These problems force our way into consciousness. And the meditative practice is about not pushing them away and ignoring, but finding stillness and silence within that. Allowing them to float across your consciousness without attaching yourself to them, thinking them out, figuring them out, puzzling things through. If you can do that over the course of 5 or 10 minutes, even in a short meditation, if you can do that through the course of that, do battle with these 300 insistent thoughts that come into your consciousness. Do battle by not doing battle, just letting them roll through. Then you can prime yourself for what it's going to be like in real life when you walk out into the world and have real life obstructions and obstacles and challenges. I remember one time I was traveling from Colorado to Mount Shasta, kind of on pilgrimage to that holy mountain. And I passed through Utah, went into Salt Lake City so I could stay there the night. And it's kind of a sprawling city, big wide boulevards and, just going way out into the distance. And I found myself on a back street. I was trying to pull onto the highway and it went out this way and I was trying to pull on. I was looking at the person in front of me, trying to see it. It was like this. And whatever happened, I'm trying to pull on and the person in front of me stopped and I was maybe following too close and I rammed into them. We had a crash. It wasn't terribly bad, but it was bad enough to hurt and, knock both of us into kind of confusion, and pulled over, handled it with insurance and all that kind of stuff. I felt really bad for bumping into this lady. Checked up on her later, after a month or so, and she was just fine, which is good. But I was out there kind of in the middle of the abyss. It was a hot day, just got in an accident. I was hungry. I was driving to find some place to eat, couldn't find a place. My hood starts smoking. Caved it in. It turned out later that I had done radiator damage, so it was overheating really bad. Pulled into a McDonald's and, my car's smoking like this. I'm starving. I'm confused and dazed from this accident and not in a good way. And I open up the hood and it's clear that I have to replace the coolant or put some fresh coolant in there. Take the lid off like this, unscrew it. Of course, I'm getting that green slimy goo all over my hand. I open it like this and it pops up against the bottom of the hood and ricochets into my forehead. It hits me and that sprays me with this goo all over. And I had to be like, wow, this is the most preposterous piling on of unfortunate circumstances that I've been in a long time. I went inside and then I tried to order some McDonald's hamburger that was really gross too. It's like one of their special ones. I forget what it was called, but it was really gross, dry. And I'm just sitting there going, wow. And for some wonderful blessing, I found, I remembered that I should be practicing patience and surrender, because there's a teaching happening here that I may not have been aware of in the moment. And I at least recognized that as part of my spiritual practice and part of my meditation practice, that I need to just be here and based in this and not get through it, but just be in it. And in that moment, I just realized, none of this all matters. This is all just an illusion. I'm not stuck here in hell. I'm here on a free day. I'm going to a beautiful mountain. Got to get my car fixed. That's fine, but I can maybe stay in a hotel for a couple of days while it gets fixed, relax, have a little mini vacation. All is not lost. Nothing is lost. Insurance will take care of everything. And so I just kind of sat back and enjoyed as best I could that hamburger, looked out at my smoking vehicle, called everybody. And of course, it's Friday at 5:03 p.m. And everybody's just closed. And it's going to be till Monday that I have to get things rolling. So I was like, oh, wow. Yet more insult to injury. No, not insult to injury. No injury, no insult. Yet another moment to recline into the seat of perfect repose. So what happens when you practice patience in that moment and surrender? A spaciousness opens in your heart, in your being. Space for others, space for yourself. And what was all knotted and compacted and hard to manage and hard to wrestle now becomes the fullness of life experienced in the moment, richness, fullness. A cup runneth over moment. So that day, just the biggest grin slowly spread across my face as the dawning of awareness settled on me. And I had to look up at God and say, thank you. Thank you for teaching me again what I failed to embody. Had I embodied that in the first place, this would never have been necessary to happen. I wouldn't have had to be overheated and burn in my own ego, my own expectation, my own schedule. Oh, I'm going to be late. Cares. Late what? You're in eternity. There is no tomorrow. There is no next minute. There's only now. You're here now. That's not a novel idea, is it? Be here now. Other people have said that. The power of now. Now. Great. You got to practice it, though. It's not an idea. Don't just read it in a book. Practice it. And that sausage example from the Cracker Barrel, that's another one. Slice off another little piece of that and say, God, take care of this. Take care of my car. Take care of my health. Take care of this journey. Take care of the people around me who I was looking at as zombies before. They're just NPCs in my own particular video game. They don't matter. They're just distractions and obstructions. I'm trying to take care of my radiator right now. Well, sit back a little bit and look at them. They actually might be able to come in and fill the void and fill the vacuum if you allow them in. They might be able to help too. Because instead of running around distractedly like this, thinking you know what needs to be done, stopping, pausing, looking around. This little kid giggling at you and smiling and staring at you might have been like, all right, kid, knock it off before I've got this, can't you see what's happening with my radiator now and all the green slime that's all over my face? What he's telling you is, look at me, it's God. Everything you see is an appearance of God. Everything you've ever known is an appearance of God. That's a face of God. Don't second guess him. Don't second guess them. Don't second guess the circumstances. There is perfection in every moment. And sometimes the worse it gets, the better it is, because the faster the teaching. As we send you off into your day, I would like to invite you to look at the confluence between today's message that Charlotte brought to us of surrender, in concert with what's happening this week with Thanksgiving. Giving yourself over to the moment and being grateful for the opportunity. That's what it is.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our session for today. So for this week, we have prepared a series of new spiritual virtues we can talk about and explore more. This is the flow for this week's satsang. We started with surrender. Then tomorrow would be responsibility, obedience, followed by integrity, and we'll end the week with gratitude. We look forward to seeing you join us in this journey of learning. You can register and schedule in our website, which is in our description box. It is every day, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. To our viewers, we invite you to send us your thoughts, insights, and stories in our comment section. So we'd love to know your side as well. And maybe get to talk about it in our next session. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and maybe share to someone you know who needs this right now. This ends our session today, but before leaving, join us for some music before checking out those to-do lists for today.
Waking up one day, I say I leave enough. Too many years of that, too many tears for that. I'm holding up my life, I'm holding on too tight. I had enough of that. I sing
Hmm.